he hasn't got anything to offer. I think he's got it there, and he just needs to an arm around the shoulder, go and show us what you can do.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, you're right there. I mean, I think everyone's been quite negative recently because obviously his recent performances, and he was hauled off a couple of games ago. But he did come on. Do we need to alter our formation to accommodate Bale there? Because he did. When he was coming on, I tweeted, "Oh, brilliant, Gareth Bale's coming on," and I had a couple of comments that I should be getting behind the players and the team. But when you're watching the football, it's not like watching School Sports Day and you're watching the egg and spoon race and you're watching the kid at the back with the size 12 shoes on that can't stand up, and you're not standing there slagging him off. You're encouraging them. This is football. These are grown men playing football. But
he won't have seen your tweet either. He won't have seen your tweet as he was going onto the pitch either, Jay. But anyway, so carry on.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. He may have seen my adages, after the game, even before the game as well. But what can you do? But there was a couple of glimpses there where I thought that's what we've been expected to see from Bale from last 2-3 years when he was playing for Wales and this and that. But has anyone else got anything to add on Bale there before we swiftly move on? Because bizarrely, we've gone on for a long time about the Man City game, and
I got one thing to say. It's slightly related to Bale, but I think it's something that goes back a little bit further than just where we are now. And it seems to me, and this was one of my, and I hate to use the word criticism for the Pochettino era because it was brilliant. It's as good as certainly I've experienced in my time. But he never seemed to trust anything beyond 11, 12, 13 players. And I think we seem to be in the same position at the moment. I think Steve's right. If maybe Bale had a run of games, and I know it sort of one thing doesn't feed the other, but I think if Bale had a run of games, he would feel trusted and he would go out there with a little bit more confidence. It was the same sort of under Poch. There were sort of 11, 12, maybe 13 at a push players towards the end that he would trust, and he would kind of throw them around in different formations. I think you see the teams that do really, really well have got an 11 that we could probably all pick, and then maybe 4 or 5 players beyond that rotate in and out of key positions. And I feel for probably quite some time, and it might be related to investment in the team and things like that we don't seem to have that, or certainly the managers don't seem to trust it when the going gets tough, and maybe take Kane out of the team for a game, a Premier League game, and just have him on the bench for half an hour. Fergie used to do it with his Manchester United strikers, and we've seen Liverpool do it to a degree, really, during the sort of first half of the year. And admittedly, they weren't fantastic, but I just feel like we seem to be in a state of flux. And I think my biggest takeaway from that is that I feel like we knew this was going to happen. Maybe Levy knew this was going to happen, that there were going to need to be changes. Some players like Eriksen and whoever might end up being sold were going to be sold. And Levy felt if there's going to be a rough ride, let's bring in a manager who can kind of possibly deliver a trophy whilst all that sort of heartache is coming and we get ready for a new era. And I kind of feel like that seems to be what's playing out, like whether it's it feels like all of that has sort of meshed together because
it's funny you should say that, Paul, because that's sort of beautifully linked into something I was going to touch on next, where you've obviously just mentioned about Poch only really trusting in 11, 12, 13, 14 players, but we've had players that were previously fringe players, squad players in our squad that have now become established starters. I mean, the likes of Ben Davies and Sanchez. I mean, why is this? Is it because of the lack of investment in the club, albeit that we blew £130 million in the summer? What is the real problem at Spurs? Because we just seem to have this persistent issue where we buy players, they don't seem to bed in, they don't seem to hit the ground running. I'm thinking back to the likes of the Soldados that came in on on the back of a huge sort of fanfare, and he came from sunny Spain to play at White Hart Lane.
It's not quite true though, is it? This season we've had Reguilón and Højbjerg both hitting the ground running. They've done okay for us, actually.
Yeah, well, Andy, you've been off Twitter for the last 4 weeks, haven't you? So,
yeah.
What's it been like, Andy?
Sorry?
But yeah, I was just go on, Paul.
I was going to say, what's it been like? It sometimes feels like something that would be time well spent.
Yeah, I've done loads of stuff that I wouldn't normally do. Yeah. On Sunday or Monday mornings when your iPhone or whatever phone you've got, they give you the weekly report. And I used to have huge amounts of hours on social media. Now it's like nothing. So, yeah, got loads of free time.
That's brilliant. So you didn't sort of venture onto Parler, anything more aggressive than Twitter or anything like that, Andy? You've
just Grindr, really.
How are you getting on with that app?
Yeah, it's all right. People are very friendly on there. Yeah.
Does your missus know?
No, I better tell her.
Yeah. Anyway, I was just going to say, in terms of our transfers dealings, obviously it's well documented that they go to a committee for a round the table discussion.
Yep.
And it seems to me that we just appear to take the approach of identifying the dream target and then just come up with a cheaper alternative based on stats and various, analyses in order to sort of justify why a cheaper player is just as good as the player that we actually want. It's almost as if, we say, right, okay, we want this supreme Jaffa cake that's being sold in Harrods at the moment. It's sublime. It looks like this. And, you've got the likes of Steve Hitchin going out to Lidl and Aldi going, well, Daniel, we found this fucking Jaffa cake. It looks just like the one at Harrods. It tastes a little bit like the one in Harrods. And they're like, and it's about 25 million quid cheaper than the one in Harrods. So, no one's going to notice any difference until they get on the pitch. Just the whole, we're seeing a pattern emerging here, aren't we? From my perspective, we sign players. I'm not keen on Bergwijn. Lucas is up and down more times like a yo-yo. We just have a number of players in our squad that don't seem to be good enough to be wearing the shirt week in, week out, and I'm just quite frustrated. I don't know where the problem is anymore. I really don't.
I know what you mean. When you look at clubs like Leicester and the way that they recruit.
Yes. I mean, look at their centre back.
You have to be envious of how well they do. Yeah.
Well, and also the fact that both Ricardo Pereira, Yuri Tielemans, and James Maddison were all on our scouting list.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you ask your every communal garden Spurs fan, would you take James Maddison? No, I wouldn't, because he spoke about Gareth Bale in the past, and he's a closet gooner, and fuck him. So and then they'll go, and this is what they say, and then they'll go, oh fucking hell, he looks really good. And so well done. Like 1 minute you're saying you wouldn't want him because he spoke about Gareth Bale when he was too young to probably recognise how stupid he is.
Yeah.
And he's if you listen to him talk now, he's matured into very well spoken,
He's a charismatic footballer, isn't he? I think is what he is, which is what we want.
Yeah, he understands the game, and so there's loads of players. There's players that the players at Leicester, for example, like Fofana, never heard of, and if Levy had bought him, our fans were like, who the fuck is this idiot?
But the thing is, though,
it's not about the players; it's about how well they're coached. I think.
Yeah,
the environment they come into, I think, as well.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the players that we've bought under the radar that nobody's ever heard of. Nkudu, Clinton Inji. There's absolutely loads of them.
There's loads. It goes both ways, though, doesn't it? It's not about. For me, it's not about. Like you talk about Soldado and Janssen and all these sort of players, right? That came in, but they all come in under the pretext that they're going to be a backup to Kane, like those players. Like you've got. NG and Nkudu and all of that coming into a system that we're buying players into a system that we don't use. We're buying players as backups to Kane and I'm telling them they're backups to Kane, and not in a system that they're strong for. You know what I mean? It's like we're saying, well, we're just going to buy you, but when you go in, the way you normally play, that's not how we're going to play. You're going to have to fit in and do the role that Kane does for a game or two while he's injured, and we'll make do. And then but when he's fit again, you'll be out. So we're not actually going to adjust our style of play to get the best out of you. In the meantime, we never do that. We never get the best out of the other players. We just go, fuck it, we'll wait until Kane comes back.
But that just comes back to the recruitment policy again. And, the age-old adage that my dad keeps saying that, you buy cheap, you buy twice. And we continually buy cheap, and we don't buy twice. We buy 3, 4, 5, 6 times over. And it's a policy that's continually flawed. And, I stand by the comment that we are identifying top class players that we want. And then we just go out and we find the cheaper alternative. And the cheaper alternative always gets found out, regardless of whether it's a car, food, anything, clothing. It carries across the whole board of everything.
Does it come back to what Paul was saying, though, about having a trusted 11, 12 players? Because, ultimately, even though at the start, Mourinho's going, don't talk about Vinicius as a backup. We're not talking about a backup. We're talking about, I need a second striker. Then all of a sudden the mood music's changed. And as soon as Kane got injured, he's like, well, Kane's too important. He's irreplaceable. We haven't got anyone else like Kane. You can't replace Kane. It's like, hold on. When we brought Vinicius in, you were saying, don't talk about him as a backup striker. He's a striker. He'll get his opportunities and blah, blah, blah. So he's fallen into the same traps as previous managers do in terms of saying, right, well, Kane is the prime player, but we have to adjust to when he's not there. And as Paul says, maybe drop him for half a game so that the other players can work in that system. Otherwise, we're never ever going to progress, ever. Certainly when everyone's happy to see Kane go at the end of the season.
Yeah, that's it.
You're right, Steve.
Where do we go from there?
Sorry. This is Andy. This is what you're not missing out on Twitter. The whole of Twitter saying, Kane deserves better. I'll be happy to see him go and get trophies for another team.
Yeah, what's
next
that
year.
about?
I can't
understand it.
Narrative.
Deal with it.
I don't quite understand what they.
There's got to be something to talk about. There is a game every day. At some point this season, every single manager in the top half has been on the brink of being sacked.
Yeah.
They've turned it around into a decent run, and now they're the best manager in the world. And
like
I said, I do think this season is a slight outlier. Doesn't mean that there aren't problems, there aren't flaws, but everything is so magnified this year. It's incredible. There are issues. Clearly, there are issues, and we've probably thrown up 5 or 6 of them just by chatting here. But it kind of almost can't lose sight of the fact that it's so tight that if we can just get ourselves together, I said this on my WhatsApp group the other day. If we can somehow get ourselves together, like we're in a cup final against a team who we've shown we can beat and have shown we can frustrate. We've got a decent draw in the last 32 of the Europa League, and anything could happen from 4th down to 10th. I wouldn't be surprised if any of those teams somehow got themselves on a run and ended up finishing 4th in the table. But that was me trying to be positive. But then, as probably one of my best Spurs following mates said to me afterwards, yeah, but we don't look like getting ourselves together. I was like, that is fair.
That is true. Yeah,
I will give you that. But
it's funny. Paul's had this almost telepathic sort of influence on tonight's pod, which is bizarre because he mentioned about things being magnified, and the thing I find really bizarre is that Andy's been on Twitter for a good, was it 2 or 3 weeks? Is it, Andy?
Yeah, it's over a month now. Yeah,
over a month, and you see some of the crazy shit that's on Twitter, and you just think, who on earth are these people? What are they? Who are they? And I'm just looking at our notes for the pod, Andy, and one of the talking points you've got on here is, bearing in mind you've not been on Twitter for over a month, Can we impeach Ben Davies?
Yeah,
it seems to me